Gentlemen, if you've ever asked yourself, what the heck do women want? Or you've thought, why are women so complicated? Then I think today's episode is going to be a big help. My guest is Sasha Fedorovsky, and she's a relationship expert, and she's a creator of the Mind Heart Method. She's the founder of that, the lead, and it's a leading program helping men save their marriages from the brink of divorce in, get this, 90 days or less. And why she qualified, we're going to find out. But something that I read about her is that Sasha spent a decade working in male dominated industries. So she got to learn by witnessing the recurring theme that many men used to successfully lead their teams, but they had no idea how to successfully lead their wives. So they're thriving in their careers and their marriages were falling apart. And I find it interesting. We're definitely going to get into that about leading their wives. So through hundreds of hours of conversations and observations, Sasha recognized two main problems. And one is that men were leaving their leadership qualities back at work and taking a passive backseat role at home. I've seen so many men do that who look so weak at home. The other problem is men were trying to apply the same problem-solving logic they used at work in their relationships. I laugh because I know a lot of guys, engineers, and they know how to fix things, and then they take that home and good luck. Those don't work as well. And Sasha lives in Australia, and we are excited to have you here, Sasha. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that intro. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. So I want to hear so much stuff. I want to learn from you because, we both work with men, and I'd love to learn from your experiences, and I want everybody to know about this. So share your journey. What led you to specialize in coaching men on relationships?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't a little girl and dreaming of doing this. I can tell you that. And obviously, I think most people that get into this sort of helping field or discover something new is through their own life experience. So, like, I have a real motivation to help men to understand women so that they can be great partners and that so they can be great fathers as well. I definitely didn't come from a perfect home. I was born in Eastern Europe, so my family immigrated over to Australia and they were young. It was very chaotic. And, I definitely, my father didn't have the skills. But that wasn't my journey. I wanted to get into TV presenting. I wanted to be in business. I wanted to be successful, like most immigrants, children of immigrants come to a country. But essentially, to cut a long story short, I ended up doing a lot of personal development because I got to a really high point in my career, almost kind of got the TV show that I wanted. But I was kind of living the vision board of my life, but it didn't feel like it. So it led me on a personal development journey. And then I learned much more about myself through relationships. And then finally, I left the corporate world working with a lot of men, high power men, and I ended up working in men's health in the coaching space. So initially, this was all about stress management, helping a lot of the men that I work with in sales, CEOs to manage their stress. Later, I got the opportunity to work in men's health, working with leading doctors, psychologists, researchers in the men's health space. And from there, I kind of just gathered all the information. I kind of started to link the dots where maybe somebody who was just specialized as a doctor or a psychologist couldn't, between emotions, relationships, men's health, and their success and prosperity. And that's where the Mind Heart Method was born.
And what is it that you found from men, these male dominated industries, and you were in that men's health space? How's that transition? Like what carried over?
Yeah, so a lot of men are mentally strong, okay, especially in our modern world. Everything a man does is very mental, especially if you don't work physically. A lot of men are physically strong. A man's body is designed to endure many things, and then especially if you're taking care of yourself, you're going to the gym. But this doesn't mean you're not going to have burnouts, right? I saw a lot of very strong men who probably should have been dead. They were living, but I wouldn't say it's quality of life. So a man can really endure. But where I found men were very weak, and this was actually causing a lot of the demise in their relationship and then also their business on some level financially, or creating some kind of blockage in their life was on their emotional side. So a lot of people call this emotional intelligence. I don't like to call it that. It's your emotional muscle, right? So you strengthen your mental muscle, your brain, by training it. You train your physical muscles, but most people don't know what an emotional muscle is. But really, this is one of the most important things for a man to develop if he wants to be successful in his relationship, but also in other areas of his life without burning out, right? Without pushing himself to the extreme.
So what's a, I've never heard that, an emotional muscle. I work out pretty much every day. I don't think I've ever worked out my emotional muscle. Tell me about that.
Yeah, maybe your wife has been working it out for you. You don't know. So with a lot of boys, when little boys when they're born, they tend to have obviously higher testosterone, but that area doesn't get developed. They kind of are sort of put in a category of misbehaving, but actually their emotional muscle or the emotional side of them, obviously this is not tangible, it's not a physical muscle. Emotions are sort of invisible, but they're very, very real, and they control our nervous system, they control our hormones, our whole body. That's how we regulate our hormones through emotions. For a little boy, it's not really developed or cultivated because boys' emotions develop later. So they're not nurtured by society or by conditioning. So most little boys grow up and this emotional muscle isn't developed. So they might build physical muscle around it. They might become really big and strong, or they might build business muscle around it. They might build a castle around it. They might get a supercar, women, all sorts of things. Oftentimes, this is kind of hiding a wound or something that wasn't developed, and this is a man's emotions, right? And this is a very new thing. A man didn't really have to have an emotional muscle developed, even a decade ago, let alone, in the last 10, 20 years, right? A man has essentially always needed just to protect and provide and not be a beater or a cheater, right? But now there's a disruption in the relationship space. Women obviously have more financial security, societal security in, the lucky countries like Australia, America, UK, definitely not for most of the world. Um, but so women want more, right? They women are always drivers for men. Most of our world wouldn't be created if it wasn't for men wanting to impress women or do something for women, right? So women are always the drivers, the disruptors, and this is causing men to really start to understand themselves on an emotional level so that they can understand their wife and create that connection, which is beyond just the transactional relationship.
There wouldn't be too much of a sports car industry if it wasn't for women, because that's what a young guy wants, to get women. In fact, I've said this before. When I was younger, I realized that I was working a lot because I wanted to get women. And when I was, I was poor. And the only way to get out of poverty was to have money. And if I got out of poverty, I could attract more women. Right. And, as a young guy, when you're in that mode at 20, 21, 22, that's what you're doing. So that's interesting. I think you say things that I don't hear too often anymore. Right. Because society is trying to make us all sound like we're all identical. It sounds like, and from what I've seen on Instagram, you do believe there's a difference between men and women very clearly, right?
Not that I just believe it. It's science, it's biology. A woman's brain is different to a man's brain. A woman's brain has much more white matter, there's much more crossover. This is why women can multitask more, men are single focus. And essentially, our society is actually a very masculine society. Women have needed to try and fit themselves in, if they're a working woman, into a masculine society, and now men are sort of like being filtered out. So what this is creating in relationships is confusion, right? I work with, like, very, in Australia we say blokey men, or you can say sort of alpha men. They're, masculine men, but they've sort of being conditioned to believe that a woman wants you to be sensitive, that she wants you to share your emotions and all these things. And so they're pretending to be something that they're not. And so a woman senses untruth, right? So this just, the man's trying to please the woman doesn't know what she's sensing and why it's wrong, but it's creating a lot of confusion in relationships.
So if a woman is providing for herself, how does she see that man? Because in the past, if the woman was taking care of the home and the children and the social elements of the family, the man felt like he knew where he belonged. But if the woman is now working just as much as he is, maybe earning as much as he is, how do men feel about that?
Well, shows a weakness in a man if he's, wondering, well, what is his place if the woman simply can make money, right? So this is the issue. That's the emotional muscle that needs to be built. There are men that don't have a lot of money, but they're very good with women, right? It's a very small percentage of men that kind of innately are connected to their instincts and they sort of know what women want. And these men don't have like they're not as successful as they could be. Why? Because they don't need a bit. A man will just do whatever he needs to do that he thinks he needs to do to get a woman. That's essentially what a man's driven by. But really, there's very black and white conversations happening kind of in the internet space. It's either let's go back to the 1950s or let's just, be gender neutral. None of these work. We're biologically different. The 1950s is over. It doesn't work, right? So you can't just suppress women to make yourself feel like a man. That's the ultimate sign that you haven't stepped into your manhood, right?
Mm. Yeah. And yeah, that's very smart. So you have, and I got a bunch more questions, but you have a 90-day or less, the mind heart method, and you can save men from a divorce. That's a big claim. Tell me about it. What is that? What do you do?
It's not a marketing scheme. This is what happens. I have men whose wives have left them. They've done some bad things in the relationship, and in those 90 days, he becomes a safe man. It all starts with releasing his stress, releasing trauma, releasing the past, managing his stress in a functional way versus a dysfunctional way, which could be sleeping with other women, which could be overworking, which could be avoiding, which could be drugs, alcohol, all those things. So first we need to have a solid foundation. We need to excavate and create a solid foundation when we're building the house. Next, he learns tools for conscious relationships. So men have never been taught really how to have relationships, right? They're kind of taught societally, I need to get the money, the power, and then I get the woman, right? Sort of
Mhm.
the Scarface theme or whatever it is. That's all they know. And this has worked for a long time, right? But once a woman has lived with you for a certain amount of time, she wants more. And the same methods don't work in marriage as they did maybe to get the woman, right? So then he learns these skills, he understands himself, he becomes more of who he is. And the woman feels that on a nervous system level. So even if they're living separately, you are connected to that woman that you love, particularly if you have kids with her. We are communicating through hormones. Men and women don't communicate through talking, through conversation. It's actually the ultimate disconnect between men and women. So that's why most of the men that I have worked with have tried couples therapy before, and it sort of takes them backwards. But it is a good stepping stone because first we need to release the stress to create the attraction for them to come together on a biological, hormonal, and more so unconscious level. She needs to feel that that man is safe. So his fight or flight signal has to now be in his parasympathetic nervous system, which is basically social engagement mode, and she will feel that safety. She will come towards him. Okay. Then I teach him how to lead her, right? How to lead a woman, how to manage her emotions, how to get her into her feminine when he is stepping into his masculine, not just physically, not just mentally, but also on an emotional level. This means he has to be centered and emotionally untriggered by anything she says or does. Okay, so it's overcoming that fear of rejection on a daily basis. And then finally, I get him to step into his leadership. What is his life vision? Right, for his life, for his health, for his work, for his mission, and also leading his family. And it's not just the relationship with his intimate partner, but that relationship is kind of manipulated by his relationship with his mother, his father, his kids, right? So it's kind of getting all those relationships to sit well through the way that he connects with them, right? So it can sound a little bit complicated, but it's essentially managing the man's stress and giving him new tools, right? Tools that work for understanding his wife. And
So if
she
a guy
feels
is high strung, he's got a wife and kids and responsibilities and a business and employees and all these things going on. What are a couple of tips to reduce that stress so that you can prime them for the next steps? Because that's something that's a huge takeaway right now that somebody goes, I'm really stressed out. And they're probably showing up horribly in their marriage, I'm assuming, because of that. What could they do?
so I'll just share something with you first. I work with a lot of CEOs and business owner. So having a business and I'm stressed because of a business, yes, I understand it takes a lot, but that's what you're geared for. You guys made this game up, right? So don't pretend you don't love the stress because I initially started off working, helping men deal with their stress at work. It's all an excuse, right? So the men that I work with who run businesses and companies, what they find is once they deal with their emotional stuff, right, with their personal life, they do less at work, they have more time, and they create more money, right? It just happens naturally. Why? Because you're designed for that. You've created it, you're designed for that. But what's holding you back is all the suppressed emotions, right? So the first step is to release your emotions. I would start off by making more time in your life. Taking CEO time, which is taking a walk in the morning, asking yourself the questions. Stop avoiding stuff. Make a list of all the things you're avoiding in your life, all the things that scare you, and just sit with it. Go for a walk in nature. Take that time every single day. If you're running a company, you are essentially the main thing producing the money, even if you've got, hundreds of people working for you. If you're not operating right, the business will not operate right.
And how do you lead at home? And does that sound like a little bit 1950s?
No, every woman wants a leader. Your husband is a leader that she chooses to follow, right? It's if you look at a man and woman next to each other, the man is larger. Of course, he's going to be the leader. It doesn't mean that the woman doesn't have a valuable role. She does. And that's what men discover. So a man is the leader. He is the hunter. He's the provider. He's the protector. He's goal orientated. He has the vision, right? And the woman is essentially, she's the alarm system. She's the feeling system. So your wife will feel stressed, overwhelmed. You may not feel it because your body's not as sensitive, but she's giving you a sign that you're taking on too much, that you've gone off track. So she's your compass. She's your moral compass. She's your emotional compass. She's there keeping you in line while you're going on that mission. So if your wife isn't giving you the response that you want, it's simply a mirror. It's your compass saying you're off track somewhere in your life. She will feel it intuitively.
I think I'm fortunate. I've never heard these things said this way. So, but I connecting them. I think I'm fortunate because I think my wife has always, for 20 something years, been all those things for me. But I know most guys probably don't have it as good. So this is good. So I said at the beginning that men are sometimes confused, oftentimes confused about women. They don't understand them. How can we men, because there's so many things that aren't black and white, and this is one of them. How can we begin to understand women? It's like everything contradicts itself as far as the way we see things in our simple one thing mind. How can we begin to understand women? Forget our own wife, that's our own battle maybe that we have to, but just in general, how can men start understanding women better?
So the first thing is women release stress by sharing their emotions, right? This is why women never say what they mean. It's not because women are liars, right? It's because they need to vent, they need a release. This is how our system releases that stress. This is what, women did when they were gatherers. They were out in the field and they were speaking to each other to, one woman could be over on the other side of the meadow, she could be there. They were speaking to each other to keep track of where the food was, also if there was a predator. That's how they survived, right? So this is kind of a old legacy system, but it's still functional. It's just society has told women basically to be like men. You need your thoughts, you need to run on a 24-hour cycle. So a lot of women are struggling within that. So then they're no longer in touch with their emotions, with their intuition. As a man, the number one thing you can do for your wife or for any woman is to hold a container for her emotions. Get her into her feelings. Make her feel something. That is what women want. Whereas men will kind of default to that logical side, the black and white solving problems. Solving the problem is actually helping her release the emotion. The rest she doesn't care about that much, right?
So how does a man say a little bit more about that? If I want to get my wife or a guy wants to get a wife to feel something, I mean, is it as simple as hugging her? Is it as simple as giving her a compliment? I've had on the podcast Dr. Gary Chapman of the Five Love Languages, one of my favorite books of all time. And no, obviously it's important to learn what's important to her and her love language. But how do we get them to feel? Tell me more about that.
So you should be asking your wife one question a night. Okay, so one question a day keeps the divorce lawyer away. One open-ended question. Okay, something where it gets you to stop and pause and be present. This is very important for a man because you'll usually go into your head and not be present in the moment, right? A lot of men disconnect at home, right? They go into autopilot. So this will help you become present within yourself and your body. Notice something about your wife. Okay, she loves reading murder mystery. Get curious about it, get interested. Ask her an open-ended question about herself. This will do several things. It will get her to go within, think about herself, okay? Because women have been conditioned for many years to kind of manipulate the man or project externally onto the man, not to meet their own needs, not to talk about themselves, to be a good girl, not to self-express. So you're getting her to self-express. A self-expressed woman is the best woman in bed, right? So you want to get her talking, you want her to be expressing herself. Then you want to ask her deeper questions. Don't talk, don't bring anything in, hold the space, hold the container, make reaffirming noises, and let her share. And then ask her how she feels about that. She may give you a judgment or a thoughts. I think that this was really the wrong thing to do. Ask her, but how did it make you feel? Where did you feel it in your body? Does it make you feel sad? Get her to lie down, get her to feel within her body, right? That is feminine energy. That's allowing her to let go and release, even if it's crying, even if she becomes sad. Do not be afraid. Hold the space because on the other end of that sadness, there's going to be joy and you're going to be her hero because you led her through that process.
Wow. That is something I've never done, and I don't know of any guy that's ever been that smart to do that. But now we're training them little by little. You know, last night I made a stupid mistake with my wife, and now I've been making love deposits for 23 years. We have a phenomenal relationship, and her too. She's made even more of them. I said, "Hey, let's sit down and do some projections on something." And this is like right before bed. And we're not like we work till the last minute. We don't work that much. We retired when we sold our company, but you know, we get to do this and have fun now. But I said, let's do these projections together. And I brought the laptop into bed. And I never do that, but I said, let's do it on a laptop because I don't want to do it on a phone and we're already going to go to bed soon. So I started doing it, and she thought of something and started telling me about her call, her women's call that she just had that evening. And she started telling me one story about it, and I was in it. Then she started the second one, and I was like kind of cutting her off because I wanted to just get to what we said we were going to do. And I just went totally against that. I should have just gone into it because I could do the projections the next day or the next month. It didn't matter. It was kind of for fun. So thank you for that because you just showed me that when she gets home tonight, I'm going to, she's not going to recognize me because I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to see what she felt about whatever she's telling me about. I appreciate that.
Even if they're negative ones. So most men that so if they don't have a developed emotional muscle, which most men don't, they will be very, very uncomfortable and even afraid of a woman's emotions. Right. So your aim as a man is to not be afraid of a woman, particularly her emotions. And so this is why I talk about sometimes with a little bit of tongue in cheek, but this is why women like the bad boy because the bad boy is usually connected to his instincts, not always connected to his heart or even his brain, but he gets her to feel the highs and the lows,
Mm.
right? Women are feeling creatures, right? Men are feeling creatures too, but men can go a lot longer without necessarily feeling and not feel like, you know, they're not alive,
Well,
right?
you just said it. I mean, there's great women out there who sometimes, and I saw it in my high school. I was a pretty good guy, and I didn't get the girls that I wanted when I was in high school. And I saw they went with really bad guys, guys who gave them such stress because they were drinking a lot, they were smoking a lot of weed, and there's a high and low. he's probably great when he's not drunk, but he's horrible when he's drunk. So she got to go on that fun roller coaster of emotions, maybe. All right, so I want to ask you about this one because my understanding of women is largely because of my wife, because I've been married almost half my life, and she loves confidence. And you talk about that. I saw it on your Instagram. And I don't think she's been able to put her finger on it. You probably can, because this is what you do for a living. What is it that confidence is so important for women when they see it in a guy?
Yeah. And that's a really good point you made about your wife. She can't fully put her finger on it. So this was why men sometimes label women as crazy. They deep down know what it is, but once they need to communicate it to a man, they just can't. It's quite hard to understand. So this is why women never say what they mean. Never listen to your wife on what she wants from you, because you'll do it and then she'll want something else,
Yep.
right? So what women want is strength in a man. It's biology. And biology, evolution, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, is not going to reward bad behavior or weakness, right? So men get rewarded by women when they're evolving, when they're in their best version of themselves. Then your wife will give you intimacy. Then the woman, will go with you on the date or they'll fall for you, right? So if a man is going onto his feminine side, if he's hiding from his mission or what he needs to do, if he's kind of going inwards, this is a lack of confidence, giving into his fears, he will not be rewarded by a woman, which is essentially nature. Okay. It's for evolution. Mhm.
Yeah, because I guess if a man doesn't have confidence, he kind of sends to her an insecure feeling of danger. He's not going to be able to protect me and give to me what I need. So that makes perfect sense. Okay. Tell me some misconceptions. I mean, I think you've covered some of them here, maybe, but misconceptions that we men have about what women need from us. Because I hear this. A while back, my wife told me, why don't you join some Facebook groups about men so you can see what they're challenged with? So for a couple of years, I've been seeing the things. I feel like I can't relate to them because I don't have these issues. But man, it's almost like a women's haters club, these Facebook groups where everything's bad about women. And I can't believe, I don't know, maybe it's just have bad experiences. What are the misconceptions? What do we think women want and what do they really want?
Well, just on a note on those Facebook groups, or if you go on the internet, on YouTube, any of these manospheres or whatever it is, these men are going onto their feminine side. They're in their emotions, they're feeling, they're complaining. And what is this doing? It's dropping their testosterone more and more. Is a woman more attracted to you when you're more in your masculine? Yes. But when your testosterone drops, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's an endless cycle, right? So this kind of perpetuates the problem. And the misunderstanding, I believe, with a lot of these men is they've been listening to society, they've been listening to the woman, they've been trying to be that good guy and fulfilling those things, but it hasn't worked. But what they're not doing is they're not being themselves, they're not improving themselves, they're not fulfilling their mission and their purpose, right? And that's why it's not working. You're not going to get rewarded if you're not on your path, right?
I was presenting to a group in Entrepreneurs Organization. It's a phenomenal group. I'm a member. I've been for 10 years. And so there's a group, a forum, all very successful men. They asked me to come in and give a talk. And I'm one of their peers. I'm a member just like them, but I went to a different forum to speak. And one of them was, I said something, we were doing some work on the whiteboard, and I said something about complaining and not taking care of business. And everybody looked at one guy and he said, yeah, that's me. I complain about all these problems in my business and I never do anything about them. And the first thing that came to my mind was, well, that's kind of a feminine trait. And I think it's as if I stabbed him in the back. He looked pretty upset the rest of the time I was here, that I was there with him. But is that true?
Yeah, it's the feminine, right? Because that's how the feminine needs to release stress, by venting, by sharing. And it feels very good for a man to be on his feminine, right? Because a man, like, the feminine world is all about ease, beauty, pleasure. That's what a man loves. A man loves the feminine. He accesses the feminine through beer, right? It's got a lot of female hormones. That's why a lot of men love beer, through nature and through beautiful women, right? That's the feminine. Okay, so he's found an access point to the feminine. and it feels good. But you've reframed it for him where it kind of feels a little bit disgusting that he is in a feminine trait as opposed to just enjoying the feminine.
And if a
But yes,
man sits in that feminine world, that trait for too long, he's probably going to become pretty unattractive to a woman, right? To a feminine
yeah,
woman.
his male hormones drop,
Yeah.
right?
I'm big on natural, I'm completely natural. I train jujitsu, I lift weights, I do hot yoga. I keep in very good shape for my age. And I'm very big on doing it naturally and boosting testosterone uh, through weightlifting, sprints, jujitsu, which is very aggressive and you're fighting. So I think that's part of it. And I've gotten mine pretty high for my age naturally. Do you have anything? Because I always want to find new ways. Do you have anything that you recommend to guys that could help them build their testosterone? And I understand you're not a doctor, you're not selling shots or injections or anything.
Yeah, look, there is definitely a natural way. I think what you're doing is great. Every single man needs to be in the gym doing weights, right? And obviously the martial arts is great, but pushing weights and being around other men with high testosterone is the best way that you're going to boost your testosterone, right? That's how you're going to do it on a physical level. And then on a mental, emotional level, you need to be challenging yourself. What's the next step in your business? Where can I be around other men who are doing better than me? You need to be challenging yourself on that level. And then you need to be resting and repairing because I have worked with some very young men who worked sort of in that bodybuilding industry or sort of physical fitness, so very young, good looking, fit men. Their testosterone was very low for a few reasons. They were overdoing it, they were over pushing, right? So you can't be 100% in your masculine. It's not going to work. You need a little bit of feminine energy, right? Ideally, for a man, it's 60 to 70% masculine energy, 20, 30% feminine energy. Why? Because if a tree is just too strong, it becomes too dry and brittle and it breaks. If you just do weights without stretching, you're going to injure yourself and all the progress is going to be gone. So this was the case with a few of these younger men, right? They had no real doctors couldn't understand why it was dropping or why, they couldn't get an erection, essentially any of that. The other reason, which I discovered through coaching them, why those levels were dropping, it was because these men were very attractive, right? So women would just approach them. They didn't need to hunt, right?
Ah,
So you actually need women who kind of push against you, that say no, and that push you to become better and that chase for you to chase a bit and to hunt, right? This increases your testosterone. So your wife, it's good if your wife doesn't always give in, right, to your request, but you should always not request, but you should always be pursuing her, right? That will increase your testosterone.
that's amazing. How about my cousin has a wife and they go on a boat here in Miami occasionally and she brings a ton of friends and it's all girls. And on Monday morning he sends me pictures of him and all these women and he says that's his testosterone boost, hanging out with beautiful women. What do you think about that?
Um, Look, I haven't studied that one. I don't know if it's really a testosterone boost. It may be if it makes him feel like a man, but what I know about sort of the home life, so when a man lives with women and young children, especially babies, right, his male hormones will drop. Okay, it's kind of to make him a little bit safer. That's what biology does to make him safer. But in hunter-gatherer days or throughout, you know, decades or centuries, men and women didn't spend that much time together, right? Men did men stuff, out with other men. Women did women stuff. So essentially, a guy cannot be in that environment all the time. It will drop his hormones, right? And
Wow.
essentially, testosterone is your happy hormone. So you really need to be around other men doing male things, right? That gym, that gritty gym that, especially a lot of my CEOs, they don't want to go to those places, right? There's resistance to go there, but once they go there, they love it. They feel better and they feel stronger straight away. And that's just through osmosis, okay? Because we communicate through hormones. We share like almost DNA through hormones, right?
Well, it's almost like this part of the podcast is sponsored by my group, the Brotherhood. The guys who do my 31-day program, I pick the top guys in each class. And we're all over the country and now in other parts of the world. And when we get together for retreats, this month I'm going to Bolivia to climb a 6,000 something meter mountain with 12 of the guys. And then we're going on a 3-day survival training in the mountains in Idaho and having a bear hunt at the end, and we'll eat the bear. And just like that, we're doing a lot of stuff together as men. And then we go to different chapters wherever we have people in the country, and we go on rucks. So we go on a hike with 50 pounds on our backs, and we do all these things suffering together. This is why it's working, I think. This is why hardly any of the guys quit. And they're saying there's a special bond. They haven't felt this way in a long time. And I have them check their testosterone often. I ask them to. They don't have to, but a lot of them do. And they do say they feel better and they're feeling more manly. Okay, thank you for all of this because I have more questions. But this has been so far phenomenal. All right, so what is it about traditional? Because you mentioned it earlier that sometimes they might go a little bit backwards. In traditional couples therapy, what could go wrong there for a guy or for the couple?
Well, it doesn't take into account the differences between men and women, right? So it is great for a woman because it can get her to share her feelings while the man is there supporting her. So that could be great. It's not going to do much for the man, right? It usually causes, especially when a couple is at that stage to go to couples therapy, there isn't enough attraction for them to deal with their issues. And usually it will create more conflict, they will stop, and it will actually lead to uncoupling, right? To put it nicely.
Lead to what?
Um, Coupling or, breaking up
Oh,
essentially. Right. So usually a lot of men that I work with, they come to me after they've done couples therapy and it hasn't worked, and maybe their wife is just saying she's given up, there's divorce. Right. So it's great for a woman to talk to someone and just share her feelings to get it out. Right. Ideally, that's her man, that's her partner. That is essentially the container in which we heal, we release our trauma, we heal our wounds, is in our intimate relationship. And the man is the leader here, right? So it's so important for men to have these tools, and for him to be able to understand and not be his woman's therapist, but be her safe space, be her safe container. That's the way it's been designed,
if you
right?
only had to choose one and not tell me percentages, who's in control when it comes to whether there's a happy marriage or not? Is it men or women?
My premise is the man is the natural leader. So the man has a lot of power to create change. He often doesn't know this. Why? Because his nervous system is more dominant. He pulls her in energetically as he transforms. She's always following you. If you don't trust yourself, she doesn't trust you. If you're not feeling good in yourself, she doesn't feel good in you. Right? It changes like that. Men see their wives just change like overnight. Right? Um, it's a lot of women now filing for divorce, but it's just because they've given up. They don't know what else to do. They've been trying maybe for decades to try and figure it out and try and make him change, and they give up, right? And usually during this time, a man senses there are problems, but a man has this amazing system in him that made him go out to hunt the bear, to go out to war, which is avoidance, avoiding the fear so that he can go and get the job done. So while a woman is feeling those negative emotions, that unhappiness in the relationship for decades, a man's system is avoiding it, right? Because he doesn't know how to fix it. So that's what his biology does. Right. So it's nobody's fault. It's our biology and not having the right information.
Yeah. I've I'm known for getting guys to do a lot of push-ups, thousands per month. In fact, I've had many of us have joined the 1,000 push-up club, where in a day we do 1,000 push-ups. And here's what I found when guys go through my program: they'll tell me that they started doing all these push-ups and something started changing. Sometimes they say that their wife tells them, "You're standing different, your chest looks bigger." They might do a little exercise here and there, but now they're doing something very consistent, push-ups every day, a certain number of them. And then they say, whether the wife said something or not, I hear this all the time. My wife started going to the gym. She hadn't been working out. My kids started taking protein powder and exercising. Nobody told them to do it. I tried for years, and all of a sudden, he's quietly just putting in the work, and they see him in the corner over there, going up and down, doing push-ups. And how interesting! Just like you said, they start to follow.
They follow, right? And they can maybe not even see him do that. They can be living in different homes. I've known that through working with men, so I only work with a man, I don't work with the woman. The wife may have acquired some bad habits. She may have a drinking habit, overspending, bad negative talk. As he transforms, she drops the habit. It just changes, right? So he's following you in every single way. So if you have a problem in your marriage, I'm not blaming the man at all, but you don't realize the power that you have once you get the right information and you get the right tools.
That's great to hear because that's all we want. I want to know. I want to know that I have an ability to affect change because it benefits me and it benefits everybody. Okay, give me a tip for somebody who wants to rekindle that marriage tonight. They haven't been doing very well. How can they quickly get that woman to open up? I mean, you did mention one thing, and it's to let them feel and ask them questions and tell me, well, how did that make you feel? Get them into that. Anything else?
Yeah, so I would first take some time to release your stress, release your emotions. You can journal it, let it out, go punch the punching bag, get over any fear of rejection that your wife might reject you. Okay, get it all out, release. Come home, be centered as you can, be present, and get her to release her emotions. Get her into her feelings, even if it means her crying, right? Letting it out. After she's cried, after she's let out emotions, she's got space for you emotionally, physically, in all ways. After that, you want to make it clear that you desire her, right? You can read a few romance novels, audiobooks, they're all the same, right? A woman isn't interested, there's a bad man, he pursues her, they make love, live happily ever after, that kind of thing, right? So you must pursue your wife. Make the move. Don't be afraid of her rejection and don't get emotionally triggered.
Yeah.
Okay. So become, release her emotions and pursue her without being emotionally triggered.
It's great because I get to check some of the things I've been saying for a few years with you. I tell guys to never stop dating their wives. Just because you got married doesn't mean to stop dating. I go on a lot of dates. In fact, my wife and I put a YouTube video about how many dates can we do in 31 days because we have this 31-day brand. And I forget the number it's out there. It's like 24 dates or something. And some are as simple as we went out for coffee and then we came back. And then later that day we went out for lunch and that was a date. What do you think about that? I find that, because I think the guy should definitely, you and I are on the same wavelength with a lot of things, but the guy should be leading and the guy should be taking out to dates and saying, hey, tonight we're going out. Just be ready at 5 o'clock and we're going to go do this. What do you think about that? Keep dating your wife.
It's fantastic. You obviously have a beautiful relationship with your wife. You're at a good place. Keep doing these things when your relationship is in a good place. The thing is, when couples get to that place where they're roommates, there's tension. To go out for a dinner can create more tension because there's nothing to say except for how much they hate each other,
Mm,
right? This is really common with a lot of couples. It is good to get out of the environment, to get out of the home, maybe do a getaway where you forget all about that stuff. But the first step is to create attraction again. And how you create attraction is you reduce the stress, the negative emotions that have been blocking it. But yes, if you're in a good place or once things get better, start dating, start doing things, create variety, right? Women want to feel, right? Those emotional ups and downs. It doesn't have to be, chaos, but it can be a new experience. It can be seeing you in a different light, going out with friends, whatever that is.
yeah. I mentioned an author earlier. I'm going to mention another one that I've interviewed on this podcast. I think you maybe have heard of. Dr. Robert Glover wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. He's become a friend of mine, just an absolute leader. And you talk about also, and I do as well, the nice guy syndrome. So, do we, and I asked my wife, about, and I share myself because I know the story about myself and my wife. And that when I met Dr. Actually, maybe I just read the book. I don't think I had met him yet. I asked her, am I a nice guy? She just said, not at all. And I think, but I go, oh, really? Am I like mean and rude? She goes, no, you're just not like a pushover. You're not this nice guy. So what is it? Because here's what I found. Oftentimes, the men in my group who were brought up by a mother and no father in the house, maybe had a few sisters. It seems to me that all they want to do is just be a nice guy. And then they're not happy and their wives are probably not attracted, right? It's not a good thing. So talk about that nice guy syndrome the way you see it.
Yeah, it is linked to an attachment with the mother or needing to please the mother. So if the masculine figure wasn't there, potentially the mother could have a negative perception of the masculine. So his own masculine instinct is suppressed, right? And the way sort of he's survived in childhood to get love or validation or just survival is through pleasing the mother, right? So then that relationship then goes on into his intimate relationship. The wife becomes the mother, needing to please, right? But that's not the dynamic. And so this will frustrate a woman because she then has to take the reins. She has to take the leadership. She has to take responsibility. And that is overwhelming for a woman. Women do not want to make decisions. And it's something that happens unconsciously in women. They do not trust the nice guy. And I'm not saying a kind guy, I'm not saying a genuine guy. The nice guy is creating a certain impression or an image or pleasing you in order to get a certain result or reaction. He's not giving you his full self. So a woman is very intuitive and she's always sensing for danger, right? Because living with a man is living potentially with danger,
Yep.
right? Or being around a man, it's dangerous, right? Because he's much
Yep.
stronger. So she's always testing for safety. So she senses, okay, she sees this man is doing everything for her, trying to please her, but she's feeling there are other emotions underneath, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't read the book, but yes, I have worked with a lot of nice guys. I call this the wife pleaser, right? And essentially, the wife pleaser needs to connect back into his instincts. Sometimes it's out of lethargy. He just doesn't want to lead, right? He wants to stay in that sort of mother son role on an energetic level. Or sometimes he's just doing it because that's sort of what he's been told. That's sort of the 90s new age sensitive guy that's, you know, and women hate it, right? So you're going to get a very aggressive, nagging, demanding wife who doesn't want to give into physical intimacy.
Hmm. I don't know if this is good advice or not, but I've stopped a while back asking my wife where she wants to go to eat. I just say, we're going to go eat. I know what she likes to eat. And guess what? Every restaurant has options and she likes a lot of things. So I don't tell her. I just say, yeah, we're going to go eat. Or I say, we're going to go eat here. If she were to say, oh, today I don't really feel like eating that, I could go with a different one. That's fine because it's the same to me. But I pick a place and I say, that's where we're going. And she likes that.
Can I clap for that one? That's one of the biggest sins a man can commit is asking a woman where she wants to eat. It might start a World War III. Just pick where you're going to eat. Even if she doesn't like it, it's better than asking her where she wants to eat.
Wow. That's huge right there. Okay. So, and I have so many questions. We don't have a lot of time. I want to ask you, why should men stop saying please to their wives?
Because please is permissive. It's feminine behavior, right? So a man is providing judgments. He's using leading questions. He's giving direction. You are essentially coaching your wife into sharing her needs, sharing her feelings, and asking for permission. Please is asking for permission. It's not natural for a man, right? A man usually feels a level of frustration when he has to say please. He's sort of suppressing himself. So it sounds polite, but really the other person is feeling some aggression or frustration. So cut the word please. You're going to find that no one cares, and actually you're going to get a better result. But you can say thank you.
Nice. I like it. Can you give an example? You don't have to say names, obviously. You're a professional. I know you wouldn't. Of a coaching experience, something that the mind heart method, man, it just really worked really well this one time. I'm sure there's hundreds of times, but give me a good example.
Let me find something very distinct. I'll use something as sort of a most common scenario that a lot of men will relate to. It's sort of not the guy who's cheated on his wife a million times, not the man who's been cheated on. We're not talking about anything too catastrophic that has happened. It's simply the guy who's been the wife pleaser, the nice guy, and his, fun, beautiful wife who he first met has turned into a monster, a demanding bitchy monster who doesn't want to sleep with him, right? And he's sort of just living in this, suffering this perpetual hell, right? He doesn't even know why he's with this woman. She's unbearable. He loves her deeply, but it's gotten to that point. And I think a lot of men can sort of understand what I'm talking about, right? So, one of my clients, he was amazing. He had a huge turnaround. He had, a lot of resistance to being his masculine energy, even though he was a very masculine guy. He loved physical combat and stuff, but he wasn't leading at home. He wasn't leading at work. He was sort of in a good role, but not really wanting to take a leadership role. And so the first thing we did was help him to release stress so he wasn't reactive, so he wasn't frustrated, so he wouldn't react like a frustrated teenager every time his wife said something and mean about him or didn't give him what she wanted. And there was quite a lot of resistance, and it kind of seemed like nothing was going to work with this woman. Okay, like we're talking about a real little teenage monster that she sort of became. But eventually he used the tools, he used directives, he used correctives, he got her into her feelings. And this woman changed overnight. And she actually didn't know he was doing this program. So her mind couldn't pick up anything. And she kind of became this, you know, really demanding, intense woman to a very submissive, loving woman who
Wow.
before she was sending horrible messages to her friends about him, always talking down on him. Now she was complimenting him in front of her friends. So really big changes in behavior, grateful, appreciative, um, really big switch. And it was almost overnight,
Wow.
right? But it was him stepping into his courage, into his manhood, taking the lead and getting her into her emotions.
What a quality
Right.
of life shift for both of them. So if I am not the kind to say this, but if I was the kind that said to my wife, "Is it okay if I go out with the guys on Friday?" Um, Again, I wouldn't say that. But if I was that type, how could I rephrase that going forward?
Yep. So as the man, you're the leader. You make the decisions, but you want to make sure you're leading from your heart, right? So ensure that your decisions are for your greater good and also the greater good of your wife and your family. So once you have that checked and once you've made your decision, just let her know the plan. Let her know what's happening. Tell her what's going on. And if she pushes back, don't have a logical conversation with her. Remember, you're not dealing with another man. Don't bring in logic. Don't defend yourself. Don't try and give reason. Ask her, how does that make you feel? What are you
Mm.
feeling? Feeling jealousy? Are you feeling fear? Are you feeling anxiety? What are you feeling? Get her into her feelings. She'll feel so happy, so satisfied. She won't even notice that you're gone, and she'll just be looking forward to you coming back.
What a good idea to put in your calendar, guys, or an alarm, something that pops up every once in a while says, like, get her in the feelings, because this is a new concept. This really is. I've never even heard of this, but it makes
Right.
great sense. And I know you have the experience. All right. I'm not going to ask you 1,000 more questions because we are running out of time, but I want to know. I know you are going to be presenting to my men's group, the Brotherhood, later this year. But in case anybody wants to start, or they're not in my Brotherhood, but they're listening to this, they want to contact you, they want to learn more, mindheartmethod.com, right?
Yeah, so that's the website. They can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube. I would recommend that they get my free copy of my intimacy guide. Start there, watch my relationship success masterclass for men. Start with the free content that will clarify a lot of things. It'll help you to understand your situation and how quickly things can change, no matter your relationship. Things can change very quickly. 3 months is not a marketing statement, but once you apply the right tools, your relationship can feel like it's changed overnight.
And all that free content, can they find it on mindheartmethod.com?
Yeah, they can head to the website or just send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn and I can shoot them the direct links. If their situation is urgent and they're ready to change, I recommend booking a one-to-one call with me. It's not a therapy session. We get to the root cause and give you the practical next steps to save your marriage, right, and create a satisfying relationship.
Phenomenal. And when they look you up on social media, I found you with Sasha Fedorovsky. You come up on all of them right there. Thank you so much. This has hopefully been a wake up call for the guys who need it. If you guys need that, first of all, follow her online. I think it's great content. I love it every time I see it. I don't scroll too much, but I do look at it every day and I see you pop up quite a bit. You have great content that always surprises me because it's almost like you're really talking to men. Like you understand the men's mind. So guys, if nothing else, follow her, check out her website, do all that. go right now. This is your reminder to go lift some weights. She told you. This is a feminine woman that understands masculinity and femininity, and she's telling you, go lift weights, go hang out with guys, go do guy stuff. It's going to improve your relationship. And I think it's beautiful that we have that power to do the things that you're saying. You're not saying to stand by and hope it changes. You have so much power. You could go do these things. Sasha, you are awesome. I can't wait to have you live with our guys because they're going to ask you a ton of questions and you're going to keep bringing value. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.